Hey there! In the world of business and finance, trust is, well, it's everything. But how do we actually build and verify that trust? It all comes down to this really powerful idea called assurance. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and find out what assurance, and especially an audit, is really all about.
So, picture this. You're looking at a company's annual report, and it's just full of numbers and big promises. How on earth do you know it's not just a creative work of fiction? That's the exact problem that assurance was created to solve. It's about getting an independent, expert check on information so that you can make big decisions with real confidence.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics of what assurance even is, then break it down into 5 key parts. We'll look at the different levels of confidence you can get, do a deep dive into what an audit really is, and finally, we'll tackle some of the biggest misconceptions by looking at the benefits versus the very real limitations.
Okay, let's dive in. Before we can even talk about something as specific as an audit, we need to get our heads around the concept they're built on, assurance itself.
So here's the official, super technical definition. Whoa, right? It's a bit of a mouthful, talking about practitioners and intended users. But don't worry, even though it sounds really complex, the main idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward.
Let's just boil all that jargon down. At the end of the day, assurance is just about bringing in an independent expert to check someone else's information. Their expert opinion reduces the risk that the information is wrong, which lets you, the person using that info, actually trust it and make better, more confident decisions. That's it.
Now here's the thing. For any job to be considered a proper assurance engagement, it has to have 5 key ingredients. Think of them as the non-negotiable building blocks of the whole process.
And here they are. You need 3 different parties involved, a specific subject matter being looked at, some suitable criteria to judge it against, enough good evidence, and of course, a final written report. Now let's quickly unpack what each of these really means.
First up, you've always got 3 key players in the game. You've got the responsible party, that's the company's management who actually created the information. Then you have the intended users, think shareholders or a bank who need to rely on that info. And right in the middle, bridging that trust gap, is the practitioner, the independent expert, like an auditor, who provides the assurance.
The other elements are what give the whole process its structure. There's the subject matter. That's the what that's being examined. Could be financial statements or a company's carbon emissions report. Then you have the criteria, which are the rules it's judged against, like accounting standards. To form an opinion, the practitioner has to gather sufficient appropriate evidence to back it all up. And finally, everything gets delivered in a formal written report.
You know what? The easiest way to get this is with an analogy. Let's talk about buying a house. You, the potential buyer, are the user. The current homeowner is the responsible party. So what do? You hire a property surveyor, that's the practitioner, to inspect the house, which is the subject matter. The surveyor uses building codes as the criteria and gives you a written report. That report gives you assurance to confidently buy the house, or run away. Simple, right?
Okay, that's the house. Now let's bring that same thinking back to the business world. For a classic financial audit, the users are shareholders, the subject matter is the historical financial statements, and the criteria are accounting standards. But look over at a review of a cash flow forecast. Now the users might be lenders. The subject matter is a future prediction, and the criteria are simply whether the assumptions are reasonable. It's the same 5 building blocks, just applied in a totally different context.
Now, here's where people can get a little mixed up. It's really common to think of assurance as being either on or off, like a light switch. But in reality, it's a spectrum. You can get different levels of confidence, and it all depends on how much work the practitioner puts in. The 2 main levels you'll hear about are reasonable and limited. Reasonable assurance is what you get from a full audit. It's a high level of confidence because the practitioner does a ton of thorough, extensive work. On the other hand, limited assurance, which you might get from a less intense review, is a moderate level. The work is less detailed, maybe just asking questions and analyzing numbers, so the conclusion isn't quite as strong.
And this is absolutely key. The wording of the report tells you everything. For reasonable assurance, you get a direct, confident, positively worded conclusion. The practitioner comes right out and says, "In our opinion, these financial statements give a true and fair view." It's a really strong statement.
Now contrast that with the wording for limited assurance. It's expressed negatively. Instead of saying it's right, the practitioner says, "We didn't find anything that seems wrong." See that difference? Nothing has come to our attention, gives you some comfort, for sure, but it's a much more moderate, cautious level of assurance. Okay, so we've got the foundation down. Now let's zoom in on the big one, the one everybody's heard of,
the external audit. This is really the gold standard of assurance, and it's what most people are thinking of when they hear that word. So what is an external audit officially? Well, it's defined as a reasonable assurance engagement. Its entire reason for being, right there in the official standards, is to enhance the confidence that users, like investors and lenders, have when they look at a company's financial statements.
And the big opinion an auditor gives is whether those financials present a true and fair view. Now, this isn't just some casual phrase. True means the numbers are factually correct and follow all the accounting rules. Fair goes deeper. It means the information is presented in a clear, unbiased way that shows the real economic substance of what happened, not just the technical details.
Audits are incredibly valuable. There's no doubt about it, which is why they're often required by law. But, and this is a big but, it's just as important to understand what an audit is not. So let's look at the good stuff first, and then we'll get into the crucial limitations.
I mean, the benefits are huge. An audit stamp of approval makes financial statements way more credible to banks and investors. Just the fact that an auditor is coming in acts as a deterrent to fraud or even just sloppy accounting. And as a bonus, auditors often spot weaknesses in a company's internal systems, which is really valuable feedback for management.
But, and if you take one thing away from our chat today, make it this. An audit opinion is not a 100% guarantee. It does not mean the financial statements are absolutely perfect. And here's why.
There are what we call inherent limitations, things that are just a baked-in part of the process. Auditors can't check every single transaction. It's just not possible, so they use sampling. Financial statements are full of subjective estimates, like how long will this machine last, that can't be proven with total certainty. And that's why an auditor provides reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. It's a very high level of confidence, but it's not perfection.
This difference, this gap between what some people think an audit does and what it actually does, well, it has a name. It's called the expectation gap. It's the source of a lot of misunderstanding, so let's close that gap right now.
Let's be crystal clear. Here are the big ones. An auditor does not test every single transaction. An audit is also not guaranteed to find every little fraud, especially if it's really cleverly hidden. And this one's huge. The auditor does not prepare the financial statements. That is always management's job. The auditor's job is just to give an opinion on them.
All right, let's just pull it all together really quick. We started with assurance engagements, which we saw can be broken down into different levels, reasonable and limited. We learned an external audit provides that high, reasonable level of assurance, shooting for that true and fair view. Every assurance engagement has those 5 core elements and provides real benefits, but they also have those inherent limitations, which can lead to that tricky expectation gap.
So the next time you pick up a company report and you see that auditor's opinion saying the financials are true and fair, you'll know exactly what's behind those words. You'll understand the high level of confidence it gives you, but you'll also understand its limits. You're not in the expectation gap anymore. So the question is, how is this going to change the way you look at the next financial report you see?